today hosted by the Center of Expertise on Global Governance at the University of Applied Science. And to those, I see several new names here in this meeting. So for those of you who are new to this event, a short introduction. So every week, one of the centers of expertise in our university hosts a research lunch. And the lunches showcase the work that the different research groups within the university do. And this week, our Center of Expertise chose to put Chris Aalberts in the spotlight. Chris is a researcher in the Changing Role of Europe research group, but he also works as an investigative journalist. And Chris has a very keen interest in finding out what is happening in obscure political bodies, I can say, or political or governmental bodies, the ones that are very understudied or underrepresented by journalists. He also did a very interesting project last year with one of our professors or lectoren, Mendeltje van Keulen, where they together worked on a book with interviews with all the Dutch members of European Parliament, asking them, what are you actually doing there when you work for the European Parliament? And that type of research gives us an insight in the actual practice of people that work in this institution instead of the theories that are behind them. And that's really the kind of research work that our Center of Expertise likes to do. So today Chris will present about, I think one of his other remarkable projects, which is his study of the movement of Thierry Baudet, a Forum for Democracy. Once a rather new and anonymous movement, I think, but Chris started following them, and now they are very present and also tumultuous force in the Dutch politics. So, Chris, I would like to give the floor to you for your presentation, and I believe there will also be some time for a Q&A, so some questions afterwards. Hopefully, we will see how things go. And my only technical question to everyone is to please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And if you have a question, I expect at the end of the presentation, you will hopefully be able to ask it to Chris. So Chris, please take the floor, and everyone enjoy the show.
Welcome everyone. My name is Chris Aalberts. I'm actually looking at all the names, and I know quite a lot of these people still after not having been at the university for about a year already. I think when we planned this, we did not think that we would still be in the chat room. So this is my kitchen. I live in Amsterdam, and it's a very small house, so this is the only place I have to have a seat and talk with you. What I will be doing is I will be talking about my book. Actually, now you see that I'm not a very commercial author, because I should, of course, have taken the book with me on my desk so that I can show you what it looks like. But it was actually in the invitation, and it's not on my desk at the moment. What I will be doing is I will be trying to do this in 30 minutes, and then we'll have time for discussion. And otherwise, Remmelt will probably tell me that I'm running out of time. And Remmelt has taken, because I'm actually more familiar with Zoom than with Teams. There's no standardization yet, and I actually guess that Zoom will be the standard. So I'm used to Zoom, and I can't share my screen with you, but Remmelt can. Here they are. Yeah, this is what it should look like. Thank you, Remmelt. I will tell you when the next slide is going to needs to be presented. I've made some. I have some images for you. Probably for the Dutch, they are very familiar. We see here Thierry Baudet and Theo Hiddema, who used to be for more than 3 years the members of Parliament for Forum for Democracy. And that's what my book is about. What I've called this the rise and fall of Forum for Democracy, for the simple reason that this party came up. It came actually up 2 years ago. About 2 years ago, it was the top of their popularity, and at the moment, I think most of the people would say that they are quite irrelevant, or have become irrelevant, or seem to be irrelevant. And of course, there will be elections in 2 months, so maybe they will become more popular. But I think most of us would say that the chances are small that they will be so high in the polls as they were 2 years ago. And what I will be doing is I will be telling you something about why did they rise and why did they fall and what can we learn from this. If you take this next slide for me, Remmelt, then people can see what I was doing, because Mendeltje actually tweeted this morning. It would be so interesting to know what Chris was actually doing when he was doing research on Forum for Democracy. And this is the slide that I added this morning, because I thought, okay, well, this was actually not even included, because I always take this for granted, what I do, and probably it should not be taken for granted. Well, if you know me, you see me on these 4 pictures. The first one, on the left, at the upper side, is me with Theo Hiddema. Theo Hiddema thinks that I'm a strontvlieg. I don't have the English word for this, but it's not a nice name. Then we have Thierry Baudet. This is a picture of the start of Forum for Democracy, when it was not even a political party. That was in 2015 at the Herengracht in Amsterdam, in front of the party office. And actually, the party office is still there. The other 2 pictures more or less show what I have been doing. So those are the ones below. On the left-hand side, you see what I do. And this is actually the only picture in years that has been taken of what I do. I attend all kinds of meetings. And what I do is I tweet about them. And I tweet actually almost everything. These are small observations of people that are attending, who are actually present, what are these people doing, are they listening, if there is a public speech, what is said to the audience, how does the audience respond, etc. And the second picture on the right, that shows what I'm doing at the same time. I'm talking with the people who are present. This is a meeting in the summer of 2015, when we would never have predicted that Forum for Democracy would become a political party, and certainly not a popular political party. And if you're very familiar with Dutch politics, you see that I'm next to an MP of PVV, of Geert Wilders' party, who's Harm Buurtma, who's actually the one who is the MP that is who talks on education, and the man in the front is a friend of Thierry Baudet, who's on the candidate list for the elections of March. This is what I do, and it is as simple as this. So I'm attending all kinds of public speeches, party congresses, meetings, which are almost always public. And what I try to do is I try to understand what is going on, and I do this by attending, but also by talking with these people. And of course, later on, when the story unrolled, the story became a little bit different, because there were also documents involved, document analysis of how is actually this party organized. And I was talking with people who did not want to talk in public about how this is going. So in this way, this project enrolled. What is important here is it was not the intention to start in this way in 2015, because in 2015 actually it was a summer evening where I had nothing to do, and I thought, well, just let's go there and see what happens at this, what then was the new think tank, Forum for Democracy. And later on, for 4 years later, it turned out that I was at the first meeting of what became the biggest party of the Netherlands. And that, of course, because I had so many materials from going there for more than 4 years, I wrote this book. And actually, what is good to know is, at the same time, I was attending rallies of other parties as well, but I mean that I didn't write a book about them. Maybe we can go to the third slide, Remmelt. Yes, this is what we see here. We see the successes, or actually the times that the Forum for Democracy participated in elections. The first one was for the Dutch Parliament. It was in 2017, and in that year, it was actually the biggest surprise of the elections, because people would predict that this party would be unsuccessful because it was the main competitor of Geert Wilders. But in the end, they got 2 seats in parliament. Well, then there was a second election in 2018. It was the municipal elections in Amsterdam. There they got 3 seats, which was, well, I would say not a success at all, because they expected to become the second or the third party of the municipal council, and in the end they were actually a very small party in the municipal. Became a very small party in the municipal council. 1 year later, those are the flags at the left. Those are the Dutch regions in Dutch provinces. And well, this is of course the biggest success of them when they became, with a small difference, the largest party in the Netherlands for the regional councils. And actually they became the third, the second, or the first party in all these 12 different councils. So from one day to the next, they had about 90 politicians in these regional councils, which was actually something that was extremely surprising, I would say. Certainly, if you would think about the 2017 situation, when this was a very small fringe party, which no one found very important. Well, 2 months later, there were elections for the European Parliament, and then actually the success was already over. So, and that had to do with the party, with the fights within the party that started on the evening of these these regional elections. So 2 months later, from the first party in the Netherlands, they became the 4th party in the Netherlands already, and the Social Democrats, the Christian Democrats, and the Liberals became larger in the European Parliament than Forum for Democracy. So actually there already it was already the start of what I would call the fall of Forum. Well, let's go to the next slide then. Here we see probably the man that is that serves as a model here to understand what Forum for Democracy actually wants to achieve. This is the man everyone is a fan of at Forum for Democracy. I would say Trump then is a very good example of the type of policies that these people are in favor of. So there is not a real formal ideology, although it's clear that they are on the right. And I would say the best academic definition here is that they are on the radical right. They are trying to undermine trust in public institutions. I could actually talk about this for hours, so I'll keep this very short. But what they do is they criticize media, well, actually the political system in general, the party cartel, as they call it. They criticize science and they criticize judges. What they do is they are in favor of, and I say it more explicitly than they say it, but it comes back to unequal treatment of different cultural, ethnic, or religious groups, especially Muslims. And I would say that that's the case at our institute as well. They often are called their names like fascist, racist, Islamophobic, etc. are used to describe the points of view of this party. And here we see a big difference between the people that are supporter and the people that are outsiders and that are not voting for them and that are criticizing them. I would say most of those supporters would always say that those labels are untrue, so the racist label and the fascist label, etc., or that it is at least exaggerated. So I would say there's a big difference of opinion between outsiders like me, and probably many of you too, and people that are actually thinking, okay, well, I want to support them or become a politician for them or be a member, etc. Well, then we go to the next one, Remmelt. Yes. Well, this is of course the biggest issue. The biggest issue here is migration. Here, the Dutch history of 2002 comes back, when we all still remember the assassination of the first right-wing politician in the Netherlands, or populist right-wing politician in the Netherlands, Pim Fortuyn, who became popular with anti-migration stances. And the idea, of course, here is that migration actually is always something that is unwanted, wherever it doesn't matter whether this is from Africa or the Middle East or Eastern European countries, actually that doesn't even play a role, although from Africa and the Middle East are more prominently seen as problematic than from the Eastern Europe. What is this party like? Well, they are against everything that is related to globalization. So against migration, they think integration policies are not strict enough, that the Islam is a danger to Western democracy. They are against everything that has to do with the EU because they feel that sovereignty is damaged by giving tasks to Brussels. And I would say a second part of this ideology that they have is, and this is how I always summarize this, and this is not how it is in the books, but I would say they are against all kinds of policies that are about invisible problems. So they are thinking about things that people could actually see. So if there is cultural change, if you see women wearing headscarves on the streets, you can think, okay, well, this is something that I don't want. But for example, climate change is something you cannot see. Of course, on the long term, maybe you can, but on an everyday basis, the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, it's not something that hurts you. It's not something you notice. So this is something they think the policies are not really needed there, or at least are less needed than others would think. And two other good examples of this are, of course, corona policies. Many of these people would say corona is not a real danger, or at least not such a severe danger as other people present it. And in the Netherlands, we also have the nitrogen problems. I don't know, the Dutch word is stikstof, then probably most of you know what I'm talking about. This is also something that people from Forum for Democracy would say this is a bureaucratic problem, and it is not something that is real. So you should be focusing on real problems are things that you can see, such as, migrants, the Islam, big mosques, etc. Well, are they also in favor of certain things? Well, they are at least in favor of a direct democracy. And why are they in favor of this? Well, probably because they think that all the other issues that they address, they will get their point across when there will be referenda. So probably they think people will mostly agree with them on all these issues, while of course the party cartel has a different opinion, and that's why they never get their point. They never get it their way. Well, then of course the problem is that now we get, this is more or less the introduction for everyone who didn't know so much about the party. Then we go to slide number 6, and maybe that's a surprise. I don't know whether everyone knows who this man is. Actually, the quality of the picture shows says everything here. This is Frits Bolkestein. He used to be the leader of the right-wing liberals in the Netherlands. He was even a European commissioner, and he was in the end of the 1990s very successful. He was actually his party VVD was larger than it is now. And he has a big influence here. The point is, this is not a coherent, when we talk about Forum for Democracy, this is not a coherent group. There are different groupings within this party. And I would say, actually, I could use 3 pictures here, but I've used Bolkestein because Bolkestein is the most important one. These are the people that say, the right-wing liberals used to be right-wing during the reign of Frits Bolkestein, and nowadays this same party under Mark Rutte has become too left-wing. So actually we should go back to this Bolkestein way of thinking, which is more conservative, more economically to the right, and more against migration than VVD at the moment is. I would say that's the biggest group of supporters that Forum for Democracy has, and it's also one of the most acceptable parts of Forum for Democracy. Another picture that I could have shown you, but it's not in the presentation, is Hans van Mierlo. If you're into Dutch politics, you know he's the one who started the left-wing liberals in the Netherlands of D66 in 1966. And he is actually, this is a different way of looking at what Forum for Democracy tries to achieve. When D66 started, this started more like trying to break out all kinds of discussions that go on the same way time and time again, and to have this free discussion, free thinking type of politics, that original solutions will come out if we have real discussions with each other. These people are into Forum for Democracy as well, and of course it goes back to the fact that it once was a think tank when it all started. And then we have a third group, and the third group has become more popular, more prominent recently, and that's of course the group of Hans-Jan Maat. Hans-Jan Maat used to be he deceased 20 years ago, I think, but he was the leader of what we called the Centrum Democraten, which was the main right-wing extremist party in the Netherlands in the 80s. Those people are present in the ranks of Forum for Democracy as well. So we have three different groups. We have the left-wing liberals who try to have original discussions. We have the people that believe that the VVD of Mark Rutte is too left-wing at the moment, it should become more right. And we have right-wing extremists, and this is all combined into one group. Let me go to the next slide, Remmelt. Well, then you should wonder how, if you have these different groups, how can you organize this? So how can you organize that these different groups together form a consistent whole? Well, this goes to an organizational question. So how do you organize a political party? And this is something I would say that in the analysis of Forum for Democracy has not been such a prominent issue, because people would find it boring, would say, okay, well, why do we actually have to know something about internal regulations of a party like this? Well, I would say that it shows us the essence of the problem, and this is an essence that goes on today over and over again. The point is, actually, you're looking at a party right now. This is the party. This is Thierry Baudet. Thierry Baudet is the leader in the parliament. He is also the chair of the board of Forum for Democracy, and he's actually the only main person who decides everything within this organization. The thing is here, the Dutch would say, hey, this looks similar to Geert Wilders. In the case of Geert Wilders, we know PVV is called a party, but actually PVV is a one-person party. There's only one member, it's Geert Wilders. In the case of Forum for Democracy is a variant to this. So although Forum for Democracy looks like a real party, it is more in practice like Geert Wilders, although there is this tendency of that it appears to be different. Then we go to the next slide, because that shows it even better. This is the organization, what it would look like until 2008-19. And this is, maybe for some of you, you think that this is a joke. This is not a joke. This is how Forum for Democracy was organized. So a party is a bureaucratic thing. A party has a congress, members, amendments, big halls where people are discussing all kinds of issues. That's what a party looks like from the outside. That's the case in the case of Forum for Democracy as well. You can be a member, you can attend all kinds of evenings, you can go to congresses. So it looks like that it's a party. But what the real party was what are the most important people? Well, they fitted into one car, and that car was actually leased. This is a Jaguar, and they actually leased a Jaguar. It's not a joke, it's real. And what they did is they actually were the ones on the basis of the internal regulations to have a say about everything that was organized within Forum. And actually all the other things could be left out. So what they did was they had a small team going from Amsterdam, where those 4 people were living, to The Hague, where the parliament is. That's a trip of about 40 minutes. And what they would do is they would discuss in the car what the party would be doing that day, and then they just started executing this. And that's it. And that's really different from, for example, the Social Democrats or the Christian Democrats, who would be having much more meetings with many more people and to think about, okay, well, how do we organize as a party that we also have consistency in our points of view and that people in the party agree with us? Here, that in the case of Forum, This did not play any role. The only thing that mattered was, what do the people in the car think? And those were 4 people, the 2 members of parliament, Theo Hiddema and Thierry Baudet, that you saw in the first slide. And the party, well, one of the party board members, Henk Otte, and the press officer, Jeroen de Vries. That was what the party was like. And the idea here is, what is important to know is, this is from a legal perspective, this is allowed. So there is nothing, there's nothing unlawful or about this or something. The point is that people don't understand that this is how it was working. And this is what we can see in the next slide. This is more or less what a party is like. What they do is they organize a congress. They did that in the Rai in Amsterdam, which is one of the main convention halls in the Netherlands. And what they did is, well, you could go there as a party member, discuss all kinds of issues, listen to speeches, but in the end, the question was, what does Thierry Baudet think? And why was that the only realistic question, or the only relevant question? Well, very clear, very simple. The board cannot be replaced by the members. And this is completely different. It's opposite to how other parties work. Other parties, members decide who the board is. Here, the board, well, they got the role, they took the role themselves, and they can only replace each other. So what Thierry Baudet could do is he could say, okay, I step down and I find someone else. And members can only interfere if 2/3 of all the members are present and 2/3 of all those members vote against the board. Well, that is unpractical, because then you would need a very big football stadium in the Netherlands to where all those members could be present. So the point here is, of course, in terms of legitimacy and in terms of whether the board needs to listen to their own members, the board does not need to listen to the members. Of course, they can have all kinds of discussions, but in the end, the board can decide itself. And if the members don't like it, then they can just quit their membership, and that's it. And there's one other thing that's maybe relevant here. The point here is, people also lie about this. So if you look at, for example, the party congress of a month ago, the internal regulations are never transparent. They are changed by the board without communicating it to members, and members would not believe journalists that criticize this. So in the end, it all stays the way it was. And we go to the next slide, and we see, this is Freek Jansen. That's the one of the main party figures since 2 years. The point is, this man, which is seen as an extremist, and I think there's no doubt that he is at least very loyal. So what does he do? He never would say to Thierry Baudet that his ideas are wrong, or that the direction should change, or whatever. He would always be loyal. He doesn't criticize, and that is actually the type of prominent party figures that Forum for Democracy wants to have: an intrinsic motivation to be consistent and to be consistent with what Thierry Baudet wants you to do. And of course, you can inspire him, but in the end, you should always be listening to him. Then we go to the next one, and that actually shows a little bit. I think if you would ask me what is the best picture of Forum for Democracy, I think this is the best picture. And I don't know whether everyone knows who these people are. Probably the lady is well known because she is the most famous one of the three. She is Annabel Nanninga. She's the head of Forum for Democracy in Amsterdam. Actually, she used to be, because she ran away in November. The interesting thing is, this picture shows you how people were selected, why people were selected, and why it went wrong. Because that's, of course, what we are doing here. The point is that in the end, everyone was, many people that were loyal in the beginning, later on, were not so loyal. It did turn out not to be loyal at all. the man on the left, who's Remmelt de Weerd, he was already. This is the top 3 of Amsterdam. So these are the three top candidates in 2018, and they all turned out to be problematic. Although they seemed to be very loyal in the beginning. Remmelt de Weerd is not a part. It seems that he's not a party member anymore. We're not completely sure, but he made very controversial comments on race, which made him actually step down before the elections already. Annabel Nanninga turned out to be critical internally for more than 1.5 years, and she ran away a few months ago. And Anton van Schijndel, he was thrown out in April, and he came back because, and in last week, for example, he was someone who was saying, okay, well, there was someone on the Corona protest that gave made a Hitler gesture, and he actually makes relativist comments about this. So these should be people that are loyal. Anton van Schijndel turned out to be loyal at the end. It's the one on the right. The other 2 did not turn out to be that loyal. And then, of course, the question is, why are people loyal and why are people not loyal? Well, I would say there are a few problems for people. Of course, this is a controversial party. The first thing is all these people made a mistake that they joined anyway. So if they step down, they will be criticized by their whole network, by the media. It will lead to all kinds of negative news about them. So that's a reason to stay in. And that's actually what Nanninga, the one in the middle, did for a relatively long time. Of course, there's also the financial motive. Nanninga, in the middle, has 3 positions. She does not have other work than working for the party. If she steps down, or if she goes out of the party, if she runs away of the party, then she cannot be elected anymore. So she will be in problems herself if she steps down. So that's probably what she doesn't want to do. And then, of course, the last thing is the promises for the future. All these people get promises from the party leader to keep them loyal, for example, by the promise that they will be having a role in the future in parliament or somewhere else. Well, then we go to the next slide. Then this is probably someone that no one knows of you. I think actually I would be surprised if you know. This is Doreen Rookmaker. This is actually someone who was gone in Forum for Democracy almost, I think, 3 months after her election. She used to be a board member of Nationale Nederlanden, which is a big insurance company. She was actually wanted within the party because there was a lack of female politicians, and there was certainly a lack of people that had a big career in corporate life. So she was actually the type of candidate that Forum wanted desperately. But she was also the one who was more or less running away at the first incidents for the simple reason that she saw that the organization was a big mess and that Baudet turned out to be an extremist. So what you could say here, and this is what Doreen Rookmaker and in the Dutch context, Henk Otte and Jeroen de Vries are other examples of this. These are people that had more experience than others. They did not accept the party rule of Baudet. They did not want to have anything to do with extremism. So these people ran away at the first time because they were relatively independent. They had not a financial interest to be there. They also had status in society, so they did not want to be involved in a party that was too extremist for them. Of course, here it's not clear what the boundary is between extremism and not being extremist, but for them at least it became quite clear quite soon that it was going in a wrong direction. So what did they do? They discovered that we don't have anything to say about which direction we are going. This hurts our own personal interest. Let's get away here. Well, and Doreen Rookmaker is still a member of the European Parliament, but now she's an independent, which is not a good role, but that's a completely different story. Then we'll go to the next one. Well, this is more or less what Forum This is more or less the way people have become to understand Forum. Forum used to be, and this is strange to say this nowadays, it used to be a middle party. What they wanted was, we are a middle party that is in favor of referenda, that is against migration, and it's against the EU. And because we are a middle party, we can be in a coalition government with, for example, the liberals of Rutte and the Christian Democrats. And then we can actually achieve these things. While, for example, Geert Wilders has never been able to achieve anything because he's in this cordon sanitaire. Well, in the end, it turned out to be going in a completely different direction, because Baudet is an extremist, and Baudet did not have to listen to anyone. So what happened was, it became more Le Pen-like, someone who Baudet has been meeting in the past as well. And here we see the difference, and I would say this is the lesson for the institute we all work for. Outsiders would say, we have known this all along. We knew in 2016, when they were not elected yet, Baudet had been talking about the dominantly white Europe. He had been talking with Le Pen. He had been talking with racists. He was at a racist march in Flanders. So there were all kinds of links between Baudet and extremism. We knew all along that this was a party that you did not want to be part of. But the point is, the people that are against migration saw it in a different way. They did not see him as Le Pen. They do often see him as Le Pen now, but they thought, okay, well, sometimes he says these strange things, but the general political line is moderate. And the idea here, the thing is that this moderate line, or this line that was seen as moderate, has become more extreme again and again. And here, of course, also the different groups that I talked about earlier on do play a role as well. The extremists that were part of the radical right or the extreme right in the Netherlands, they don't have any problem with this anyway. They never had. We also have the problem, but the people who are more from the left-wing liberal perspective, we need an open discussion on migration and whether migration is a good thing for Dutch society. They ran away very fast, for example, Doreen Rookmaker. And then the people who are more in the Balkistan group, they stayed longer, but they more or less left last November and December. So here we see, don't judge too much the people that were inside, because they actually were not aware of the things that the people who were outside realized from the very first start. So you could say here, this was a learning process that was going on. It was people needed to learn that this is an extremist group and that it is not a moderate group, while they thought themselves in the beginning that it was moderate. Then we go to the next one. Then we see this is a party meeting in Zaandam at the end of 2019. I wasn't there myself, but here you can see the 5 most important people of Forum. So we see here sitting there is Theo Hiddema. He ran away in November. Then we have Dirk-Jan Epping, who's a member of the European Parliament. He also ran away in November. Then we have Annabel Nanninga, was the head of the Amsterdam group of Forum for Democracy, who also ran away in November. Then we have Thierry Baudet himself. He is still there because he's in charge. And we have the promoters, or actually the PhD supervisor of Baudet, Paul Cliteur, who used to be a member of the Dutch Senate. And he ran away as well, but he is still loyal to Baudet. So in a way, you could see he is still a party member, but he's not on television anymore. What happened? Well, the whole European Parliament group left. The whole Amsterdam group left. More than 2/3 of the first chamber, the Senate in the Netherlands left, and many regional councillors left as well. So if you would count this up, then I think about 60% of the people that were in Forum for Democracy left the last 3 months. And be sure, in the beginning of November, this was not at all happening. So we still had this the situation in which people still accepted the dictatorship of Baudet, and in 3 months the whole situation turned upside down. Well, now of course we have the problems on the table that people tried to prevent. People like Nanninga, the lady in rose, in red, the Epping, etc., cannot be elected anymore because they don't have a party anymore. They have a financial motive, and of course also political motives to stay. So what is needed is we need something new. Well, then we go to the next slide, and then we get more or less to the elections that are coming in 6 weeks. This is, you see here, Nanninga again, who has been the main criticizer of Baudet internally. And we have Joost Eertmans. If you don't know Joost Eertmans has never had an elected role in Forum for Democracy, but he would have been on the candidate list for the parliament, but he stepped down. He is also the leader of Leefbaar Rotterdam, which is Livable Rotterdam, which is the main right-wing group in the City Council of Rotterdam. These two merged into a new party, which is called Ja 21, Yes 21. Don't know, and that is the correct, that is an abbreviation for the correct answer on the right. Of course, the point is here, actually, we're back at the beginning. We're back at the moment that people feel that something should be done about migration. There are people that still feel that there should be something done about the EU, that referenda are important, and that there's no real political group in the Netherlands that addresses these issues. Of course, here, Geert Wilders does, but we all know that Geert Wilders will not be in the government after the election. So Geert Wilders will not play a role. He will say that he is in favor of these things, but he will never actually realize them. Well, so we get to this idea, actually, which is the old idea of Forum, that we need a middle party or a moderate party that is between the extremists of PVV and Forum on the one hand, and the left wing, actually the former right-wing liberals of VVD, which are seen as left-wing liberals. On the other hand, there is a place in between for a moderate right-wing group, and that is the group of everyone who left Forum for Democracy, which is Ja 21. And the idea here, of course, is this is an attractive position for the simple reason that it is moderate. So people that vote for the Christian Democrats and the right-wing liberals, they could actually change and go to this new party, and then all these things that are wanted could be achieved. Well, then we get to the irony of the sixth slide, the last slide. Then the situation is like this. If you don't know all these names, I don't blame you, because I always say I'm a freak in right-wing politics, so I actually know what these groups mean. But this is more or less what the picture is right now. So we have Ja 21, Yes 21, which is the party of the people that were too moderate for Forum, although Forum still exists, so Forum is not even on the slide, and we also have PVV. Then we have some people of Forum for Democracy who think that Ja 21 is the wrong group. So the internal division leads them to Code Oranje, which is Codes Orange. It's a strange name because it's the same name for when there are too many infections of COVID. So I don't know whether that is a good name for a political party, but and which has a different leadership, which has people also from the right, from different local groupings, but more or less in terms of content, they think the same things as Ja 21. Well, then we also have Go, which is also a party of former Forum politicians. We have Oprecht, which is a party which is also going to participate in the elections of March, which no one knows actually, but which is a combination of people that were in Forum and the party of Geert Wilders. And then we have Lijst Henk Krol, which is a politician who was a politician for the elderly party in the Netherlands, who actually participated with someone from the Go party. I don't know whether anyone actually still understands what I'm saying, but that's actually the purpose of this. And then we also have NL Beter, which is a party in favor of better policies for healthcare and education, which is led by the wife of a member of the European Parliament of the party of Geert Wilders. And we have BBB, who has a party program that is quite similar to Forum, but which is more on agriculture and rural areas. The point why I'm giving you these details is this is where it started. It started with all kinds of groupings in 2017 that were more or less to the right, which more or less had the same ideas, and which were mostly unsuccessful. There was only one successful group then, and it was Forum. Well, the point with all these groups is they are all internally undemocratic, just like Forum, and they have the same philosophy, just like Forum. And the chance that they will actually be in government, or that they will even be in the parliament, is quite small, although Code Oranje and Ja21 still have at least one or two seats in the polls at the moment. So, how acceptable are these parties? Well, we don't know. Actually, they are all more or less against migration. They are all more or less against the Islam. They are all more or less against the European Union. So we have new political groups with new headings, with old people in structures that are similar to the party that more or less collapsed, but that is still existing. So what the only thing, the conclusion of this all is we got difference. The landscape became even more difficult than it already was. Actually the right-wing people in the Netherlands are split in different, even more different groupings than before, and it makes the chances that they will be successful actually achieving something in the area of EU migration, etc. Even the chances that they will actually achieve something will be smaller than any time before, I would say. And the question, of course, is whether people who are in favor of groups like this, if they know these groups, could also vote for Geert Wilders, and probably they do. And then we're back in 2017, because then Geert Wilders is again the largest group on the radical right, which is not going to achieve anything. And all kinds of other people that realize that Geert Wilders is not achieving anything are fighting somewhere in the margins of Dutch politics. Well, and my last slide has a big question mark. I hope I was clear. I'm not, of course, I would have preferred to do this in a real room that I can see when you're puzzled about my story, or whether you're puzzled about my story or not. But let's see. Thank you.
Chris, thanks very much, Chris, for your presentation. I think we have 10 minutes left, and I'm quite sure that there must be people who want to ask you something about the presentation that you just gave. So if you're interested to ask Chris a question, you can raise your hand in Teams, or you can also type the question in the chat if you find it challenging to speak in front of a big audience like this. That's all. I will allow it for today. So anyone who has a question for Chris, take the floor.
Yes, I have a question.
Oh, here we have a question. All right, go ahead.
What did the party do when there was a think tank?
Well, actually, the think tank phase has lasted for a little bit more than a year. What they tried to do the same as what they did as a party. They try to achieve that there is a policy change in the field of migration, the EU, and referenda. And why did they stop? Well, they stopped because it was completely unsuccessful. So no one actually listened to this think tank. So what they did is they had weekly lectures on the Herengracht every week, which was nice because there was free beer and free wine. But it was not much more than that. And actually, the idea turned out to be quite naive, that politicians in parliament would be listening to a small group of people, because that is what it was, a small group of people that was pleading for less migration. So that also gave the PR the PR that also lead to this PR move of, okay, well, if we cannot change politics from the outside, then we should be in parliament because then we can change it there. So even there was already this moderate idea of, okay, we are only interested in policy change and nothing else.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I also see two questions popping up in the chat, so I will ask them to you. The first one I think is quite interesting. Why do you think it took so long for people to see the extreme nature of Baudet's thinking when it seemed so obvious to the outside world?
The answer is it was not obvious to the outside world. It was not obvious to many people. That would be my. Was it not obvious? Well, the point is we have this discussion in the Netherlands on migration, Islam, integration for about 20 years. And the problem is that everyone who is not in favor of migration or not in favor, who's against migration or who says, okay, well, integration policies are not strict enough, or people that say, the Islam is not, at least not a positive development, those people have always been so fiercely criticized by by mainstream media, mainstream politicians, etc., that those people have become blind to see where criticism on policies ends and where extremism starts. And I think that is what I learned myself also. And I would say that the difference between these two is not so clear. Well, if the people that would never vote for parties like this, they think it's very clear, because they would say those people most of the time say, okay, well, if you actually are saying negative things about the Islam or about religious freedoms or about migration, they are always on the wrong side. But the point is, of course, that it is not always on the wrong side. I mean, and of course, we all have different opinions there. But I would say that most people are pressed, these people are pressed into this framework of, okay, well, we are seen as wrong anyway. So, but we are certainly not part of the other group. But I would say, and that is, I don't think that everyone agrees with me. I would say if you're in the migration critical group, you have still different tastes. How I would say it. There's still a difference between people who say we should be thinking about migration critically, and people who say we should keep Europe white. And I would say, I would give you an example of this. Maybe that helps. I was surprised at my other work at the Erasmus University that now that we have COVID crisis, did this not have any effect on the marketing for international students? Well, I would say, okay, now we have a capacity problem with the building and the keeping 1.5 meters. So I would say it would be logical to have a critical discussion on whether we need to have international students this year. I think that is a realistic, I mean, you can have different opinions, but that's a realistic discussion on whether that is a wanted development or not. But that is something, but the point is that people who think something like this are often presented as being the same people that want to keep Europe white, and that is incorrect. And that makes it confusing for everyone who is part of this critical group.
Yeah. All right. Thanks very much. I think that's a very clear answer. So we have a question from someone that you know well, I think, Mendeltje van Keulen, and she asks you, what surprises you in this case study of Forum for Democracy? Having studied so many parties in the past, both at national and the local level.
What surprises me is that people, a completely different way of presenting Forum is that it is a business model. So you want to be a member, you can pay for what they do. And then there will be state subsidies, and you can buy books, and you can even sign versions of the books. So there are millions of euros going every year to Forum. And what has surprised me is that people who are supporting this are not able to be reflective about this at all. So they don't want to be reflective on, and that this is actually in the personal interest of people that are still in forum, that people are not interested in whether actually something is achieved, and that people are also not interested in that they that they don't have an influence. So if you would go to a congress of, I will always say the Social Democrats, because that's the best example, a Social Democrat conference, I mean, it's a PR disaster every time. I mean, right, silly pieces about them. But I mean, they do have discussions. And that is a completely different story than the PR exercise of forum. And if you would explain that to members of forum, that they would never give you, that it would never lead them to reflect on what the group is doing at all. So it is blind. It's complete. These people, yeah, it seems that they are blind for all the problems of their own movement. Well, I think those problems make it impossible for them to achieve the things that they want to achieve. So I would say it's rational to think about these problems, and these people just don't want to do it.
Yeah. All right, thanks. I hope that answers your question, Meltje. I think I will have time for one more last question, and I pick one from the chat. I think it's an interesting one because it's more about you and your role as a researcher. I think we all saw the pictures in your presentation where you were hugging the subjects of your research, so to say. And this question is, I am wondering about your own relationship with your research subjects. The picture seems to imply quite a close one. What is your positionality here?
Well, the interesting thing is that says a lot about my position. My position is, and I'm always more open about this, I've become more open about this because I think it is illustrative for what people within the movement have become aware of as well. I mean, I was someone who was in this corner 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, I was a fan of Pim Fortuyn. And if you ask me now, I mean, now I'm a Social Democrats voter, I don't understand anymore why I was ever a fan of Pim Fortuyn. And I think people always knew this. And I mean, this is not something I said, but it is something that they more or less think, okay, well, he's interested in what we're doing. And what is certainly my position is that I'm more open to the type of things that they are in favor of. So I don't think that it's a problem to discuss critically what migration is doing to Western societies, etc., or whatever your position might be. But I mean, that I don't see that as problematic. And that is what people can see when they talk with me. So they do know that I'm not one of them, but they do see me as something that is more or less sympathetic to them. And that is something that did change because I did fall in the trap myself in 2017 when I thought, okay, well, it seems, and this was actually the PR message. So I mean, I was taken by the PR. The PR message was, we are a middle party, we are going to, we have Thierry, and Thierry sometimes says these extremist things, but the party is broader than Thierry, and we have more different point of views internally. So this was actually what they wanted, that people like me would think, okay, this is a normal party, it is respectable, it is not extremist at all. And this is what you can see. I mean, they invited me, I didn't tell you this, but I mean, they invited me in 2017 to give a training to their own politicians. And I did it, and I think there was nothing wrong. But if you look at it from today on, I mean, Hidema calls me a strontvlieg, Thierry hates me. Actually, when I do speeches in the country on this, people are attending and they are sent by Forum. So it became very clear that I became aware of the PR trick. So, yeah. And the pictures that you're seeing, that's the time that they still thought he can be on our side.
Yeah. Well, I think that's thanks very much, Chris. I think these were great answers to the questions asked. in the interest of time, I think we have to wrap up for today. I see that there were the 2 small questions came in the chat, so maybe you can answer them over the chat or something like that.
How many members do they have? We don't know because they have a very bad administration. That's the real answer. I mean, we don't know. And what will fall turn into collapse? Well, we don't. I think they will get seized up, but the point is they will be a fringe party which is seen as extremist, and they will never get back to this middle position which made them big in the past. I think that's the.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. It's time for me to wrap this meeting up then. Chris, thanks for sharing your broad knowledge on the party, on the form of democracy. And thanks for everyone for attending this research lunch. Well, yeah, I wish you a great day and a great week. The only thing I want to point your attention to is another event that we have upcoming next Thursday, which is the event organized by our research group, Changing Role of Europe. Chris will also be a speaker there amongst many others of their researchers. I will now post a link in the chat for more information on this event. And so we hope to see you there. Or in our next research lunch, which will be in April. So thanks again, and have a nice day.